Hello. Good evening, everyone. It is currently 12 a.m. for me. And just after the biggest event of all time. We had a lot of PPKs, and I'm getting a lot of questions. Today, we're addressing the biggest question in PB. What is Barovia? What is the Imperia? What is Barovia? My notes! So we're gonna talk a little bit about how it started. Then we're gonna talk about what the actual basis of the Barovia is. Everything that we're not gonna touch everything they've done because if I did, you might have a stroke. But let me tell you this. Let's start with the current basis. This is what everyone sees. Horrible people. Child murderers? Though that's not true. That's IAU rogues, which we'll get to the IAU program later on. Fascists? Not wrong. But good fascists. I'm joking. They're not actually fascists, but they do have a lot of autocratic principles. They use a lot of principalities that are similar to fascism, but they don't care so much about race. They don't care about what you believe in. They just want humanity to live by any means necessary. Now, I'm not going to say all those means are good, but they're not horrible people at the end of the day. So, hold on one second. So, we're going to talk about a little bit what is Barovia? Let's talk about its roots. The roots, of course, is started by Samuel von Tepes, who would later become the Count or Count von Tepes. I believe his name was actually just Samuel Tepes at the very beginning, but he became von Tepes as he took on this Germanic ideal and became this leader that he started. It was just a little hamlet. When they first started, they literally fought on horses and with spears. They were like, "Hiya! Hiya!" They were literally cave people. It was really funny. But through the actions of a player, because fun fact, the entirety of this faction was made by a player originally through a thing called wargaming, which is a little bit dead now, but that's because of situations and also scheduling issues, life. But let's continue on a little bit. Barovia was started by Samuel von Tepes, who was this guy who worked very closely with Alpha Team during Arc 0 and Arc 1 of PB. Which those were the biggest arcs of all time. On God, for real. But there's still more, right? There's a lot to it. Trying to adjust what we can go through next. Samuel von Tepes had this ideal of, I'm going to become a dictator. But my rule is this. Barovia will crumble. After the war is done, after everything is said and done, the empire is no more. We are gone. There is nothing. That was the entire basis of their ideal. It's just basically autocratic regime with capitalism mixed in, not so much amongst their own people, but amongst other factions. They were very capitalistic in their ideals, the way they traded, the way they bought things, and even in normal items around their home. It's all very capitalistic in nature. Or equal trade, but still autocratic in a sense where most things belong to the state, by all means, because Count Tepes reigned supreme. And he would, of course, go on to marry as well Alexandra von Tepes, aka the original Countess von Tepes. But let's talk about the IAU program before I wander on a little too much. The IAU program was started because of one person, a ghost unit that we now know as Lauren von Tepes, aka Countess von Tepes of New Haven. Now, you might be asking, how did they correlate? Well, Alpha Team accidentally killed Countess von Tepes. And Barovia, or Little Hamlet at the time, as it was known, had this little thing called a tribe of Vortigons. They had a large tribe of Vortigons that they used for resurrections. They would bring people back from the dead a lot. And I mean an absurd amount. I'm talking there were at least 12 people that I know got resurrected. Okay? That's just crazy. They were crazy. But continuing onwards. Also, you might notice standing desk. I can do so many things now. I can pace around my room and still be head high. But I digress. Let's get back on track though. The IAU program is basically an idea to replicate the exact process that Lauren went through. This is once again bringing back a concept that I brought up in Generation 3 Oda, the perfect human. This program where you would try to recreate using a gene sequence from a thing called the Sword of Humanity that was inscribed into it was the perfect gene sequence to make the perfect humans. And that is how Barovia, that's how the ghost unit named, that's how Lauren got made and why she seems to be the most beautiful woman on the planet as said by actual lore. But that's because she was made to be perfect. That's why she's fast. That's why she's a good shot. That's why she's a good leader. It's because of those properties. And so the IAU program was a means to replicate that partially. And they didn't really go well. But that's how we got characters like Jane White, or also known as Jane Doe, John Doe, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of Jane Does, a lot of John Does. And it's just people who were taken, then manipulated, and then change their gene sequences. They lose all their memories, and they basically just kind of forgot who they were. Which brings into another thing of Barovia. Barovia is not really ethical. They are ends justify the means. They re-brainwash Union soldiers who were brainwashed just rather than breaking the brainwash because it's not as hard. They don't have to go through all the time to unbrainwash them if they just re-brainwash them to serve Barovia. That's why they have clones, like, to, fight the war against I-6s. They're like, alright, we'll make our own. But these ones are a lot more grotesque. They don't have any of the, pain receptors. They are just marching weapons. They will keep marching even with the guts hanging out. And those are known as the Erased, which was originally the name of the army of a little hamlet, but we slowly became Barovian soldiers, or Empyrean soldiers if you're going by the overarching lore. We're not going into that today, because if I did, we'd make this video an hour long. We don't need that. Let's lock back in. So what are, the feats of Barovia? Well, they fought the first war against the Vazarath. They met the Sorguth. They have met with numerous alien species. They have fought numerous void anomalies and closed numerous tears into the veil. This faction is the reason why we haven't collapsed yet. It's been 24 years since the Resonance Cascade, since the 7 Hour War, and Barovia was founded in 2023, a few months, I think, after City 17 occurred. Actually, no, before City 17 occurred, actually. But still same year. And since then, and in those 5 years, they prevented numerous wars, numerous, breakings of reality, and they are still fighting wars. Barovia is known to be fighting, 10 or 5 wars at a time every single fucking year. And they will keep fighting until everything is done. They are sponsored by the Archons. They were even given an Archon by the name of Maxim, who trains their soldiers and, helped in gathering soldiers for Barovia. And that's kind of the situation, to be honest. Barovia is the biggest faction and probably the worst amount of people that you can have in a faction, because they're very much, ever since the capital got raided during the fall of the UFC during 2025, where the UFC fell, numerous other factions fell, including New Haven, which got nuked, but they survived. UFC didn't, and so did Barovia also survived. But the Count was injured, and since then, there's been a lot of interesting things going on in the overall Barovian world, where sometimes you'll have these religiously zealous people, but they're praising the Count. Originally, the main religion that was in Little Hamlet was Catholicism. And that's what the Count believes in. But after his injuries and people started to believe that he was a man sent by God to just cleanse the world and to lead them into a glorious victory, lead them to this glorious idea of freedom for all man and all kind. Some believe it, some don't. And it really is dependent. A lot of people believe in the idea that was originally that found in Little Hamlet. Humanity united under one banner. Sure, there can be puppet states like New Haven, like other places that could be allied with Barovia and still helping them, so long as, well, it helps in the war with the Combine, because the infighting is just what causes the issues, and so they want to strip that out, get rid of the infighting, get rid of all middlemen, and just have it all under one banner. That way they can focus their efforts against the Union, then the Void, and then everything else, and then war's over. Then everyone can finally relax. And that's been the goal of Barovia ever since. However, it's not that simple, of course, because there's always going to be people like, this is really fucked up. Why would you ever let this happen? Like, who's going to believe a leader will actually tear down his empire? There's no such thing as a good dictator. But, by all means, Count Von Tepes is. The IAU stuff that we hear about with Jane White and John Doe never wasn't the Count's idea. It was actually a rogue separation from Barovia, where they do these horrible, monstrous things. Which brings me to another thing. Let's talk about the allies of Barovia. Barovia is currently allied with numerous different factions, from the formerly known UFT, the New Order, as it was in Russia, with characters like Owen Gervas and Elena Lysenko. There is numerous alien races, Sorgov that we know of, Vazarath. Then there's New Haven, originally at least. And there's so many more. But of course, there are people in them who are like, I don't really like this. I don't fuck with being around Barovians. Which is fair. A lot of people do not believe in the idea of a dictator. I'll keep saying that because that is what he is at the end of the day, Count Von Tepes. A dictator who can actually give up anything. But now let's talk to the part everyone wants to hear. What are soldiers of the Barovian like? Well, there's Erased. Holy moly, the Erased. These guys are clones. Basically, they're bred to serve the Count. They're serving in this war no matter what. They are here to die. They don't matter. They will march unto their death. Literally guts hanging open. Does not matter how many injuries they take. They'll treat themselves, but they'll march. And they'll keep marching until they're all dead. Until the enemy is dead, or until they are covered by their corpses. Much like 40K. But that was also a lot of their inspiration from the original writer of Barovia, who based them off Krieg. Wow. Rough. We're not going to talk about that. And then you have the original Erased, the Erased Generation 1s, which were just normal soldiers who wanted to serve Barovia. These were seen as commissars, really older generation soldiers. Numerous commissars used to serve in Barovia, but they've been all but washed out. Currently, only 10 or so survived or are still active in duty, including but not limited to Aureli Paradis, my character. And yeah, now let's talk about the Barovian soldiers that we have now. Most are just literal grunts. Then they have the leadership that are just, some are cruel, some are not. It really is dependent on their backgrounds. But most are just a normal military structure, kind of loosely based off the U.S. Marine structure, if I'm not mistaken. That were the U.S. Rangers. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask a light, or you would have to ask light. But all in all, their whole purpose now is just to share the count, be themselves, and yeah, fight until the end. You know, fight until the end is reached. So I think that answers everything about Barovia. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, I guess. God, I am gonna have a hard time answering all those questions. But if you have any questions, you can either message me in the Discord in the lore discussion videos, or yeah, that's it. Thank you guys. I'm going to set my fucking desk down now. Bye bye. I'll let you just experience death as you go down.